Alrighty, thanks for hanging in there, folks. And thanks again for your likes and for viewing. And if you haven't, please subscribe. And now we'll continue. From last video, we had set up how you take a birth date, and this could be possibly yours or anybody else in question. But for today, I'm working with Kiki Wyatt. And I started to do analysis. Now, one of the first things I like about, not the only thing, about Vedic astrology or Vedic numerology. It's so common now to say from Vedic astrology. My apologies. But this is the grid, and I'm keeping the other grid, the homing grid, if you will, or the foundation of how you would representation of where you would place the numbers in any according birthday. So now one of the things you start to look at, and I didn't add from the last one, which I will now include. If you notice, you see life path, right? And her life path is the number 6. And for those who are familiar with numerology, they know it's a very predominant number in your lifestyle. And even certain schools of numerology, they will tell you this is what your purpose of coming here, or your life lesson. That could be another choice. I don't want to get too dominant with anything about purposes and directions, but it is a guidance. It's a where a person or individual can look to, if they choose to. This gets more further information elaborated. Now, there's plenty of good sites out there. One can look it up and look at life path, life lesson, destiny numbers. Another one that's commonly with the terminology of life path. And you can see how these are, and look up yours. First calculate yours. If you're not familiar with the calculations, is very direct. You add up all the numbers from your date and month and year. These numbers will add up and tally to the number 6. Now, when you get to a complex number, which is a compound number, which is 2 numbers, for example, this 10 is a compound number, even though we don't use the 0 as predominantly, but it has a reference and it has an important meaning. So anytime when you see a 0, for instance, and Kiki is the 1 and the 0 is like the amp or amplification or intensity, if you will. So when you see a number with onto the right side of it with the 10, there's 3 of them that you will have in a calendar or a month. That's the 10th, the 20th, and the 30th. Those have the only combinations with the 0 and the 1, or 0 and a number. That could be 0 and 2, 0 and 1, 0 and 3. So that's one of the things. So that can intensify. So that gives you one indication when you looking at a numerical chart. You look for the intensity, if any, in there. And you start to break down the numbers, get to a pattern, if you will, of just a habit. And you can start to see these things in a birth chart. Now, another thing that I love about it is that with the Vedic, just like Vedic astrology, Vedic and numerology tie into each other. Now, they both are definitely a standalone system. You can actually be inclusive and just do, but you still have to understand elements of astrology. Astrology is like one of the essential key tools in getting a knowledge base, or building a knowledge base, so to speak, into other levels. So now, we're looking at her life path as a 6. Now, 6 is ruled, and is in the earlier videos. Each number has a planet ruling. So number 6 is a title to Venus. So good things as far as in astrology, when you come to Venus, Jupiter, these particular planets are considered benefacts. And they are beneficial when you see the numbers. Now, it doesn't mean that everything is all good. It means that they will give you a lot more than what you would anticipate. they give you a break, so to speak, if we will. So we're using these terminology just to get a familiarization. Of course, I highly recommend to actually start to explore this, and then you can actually see a little bit more benefit. But if you have been keeping with me with the other videos, you'll actually have a lot to actually benefit from then to now. So the basic number they use is the number that's the date of the month that you're born on, whether it's either the 1st or the 31st. But their terminology, they call it the basic number. Now, some of them, they also actually use it as a psychic number. And we'll leave it at that. It's just that it's not meaning that you're psychically inclined, although it can be certain numbers do portray it. But it just means that there's something that's very common or naturally. And that's what my takeaway from it. Okay. So when you start to look at the chart, first thing on your chart, just look at the pattern, if any. There's always will be something. There's going to be always a rule, empty space or empty blocks or empty cells, depending on which way you want to use it. But in Kiki's chart, we have space here in the 9, space here in the 5, space here in the 4, space here in the 7, and the rest are full, as you can see, are occupied. Now, with this here, let's start to go and see. One of the things you do, you look at from the earlier visit, I tell you, start looking, it's like a tic-tac. You see if you have a cross line or vertical up and down, which Kiki does. And she has, even though there's one missing, they consider these numbers, when you see them together, is combination, but their terminology, they use yoga, Y-O-G-A, and its union or combinations would be the best explicit too in this case here. So she has a column filled, the 2, the 6, and the 3. Now, again, what's important that I like, because this, her destiny number is in part of this here. And 6s is ruled by, in the other videos, and please, I advise you look at, there's a correlation with each number to a planet. So Venus, again, like we said, so Venus is good for any type of attraction. It's also can be a money number too. They use a reference with 7 as a lucky number, but that's, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but this, working with what we have here, you'll see the energy. Now, I find this combination, and this can be in various ways, the 1 and the 2 are very common for what they call a good yoga, or a beneficial yoga would be much more better. And it's term they use Raja, R-A-J-A, Raja yogurt. And this here, the 1 and 2, is very beneficial. Especially, you have to watch if the destiny number is involved with these 2 combinations. This will give you an added, if you will, a link up or a power base, if you will. Now, this is where you start to, where it gets interesting. Even though these spaces are empty, they do have a time in a period in your life that numbers, the 5 will come into the person's life. And actually, each one of these numbers you will go through an individual in the first 45 years of life. Let me repeat that. The first 45 years, you go from the number 1 to 9 through your numerology grid, so to speak. And this, if you don't think of this as I'll give you proof of it. All you want has to do is to add the number 1 to 9 together, and you'll see what the total comes. The total should be, if you did the actually calculations correct, should be the number 45. All right. And that's interesting because 4 plus 5 is 9, which gives you the complete one, or completion, if you want, it will. And this is what I wanted to correspond. Now, this interesting I like about this here, the 1 and the 8. The 8 is represented by Saturn. So there's a certain amount of stability when you see that in a person's chart. And if you see a 1, well, you know that's leadership is also ruled by the sun. So these people predominantly will shine in some way, and that's relative to where the person is at. But I'm going to just stop with this here because I know I put a lot on you, but just keep this in mind. Your birth number, basic in this system, your life path is the combination of, or not the combination, but addition of all your birth numbers from this and that. Now, keep in mind, I want to end it with this note here. You have a name too that actually gives a different or more additional more a person's life. So these are certain things of the foundation. So I'm going to leave it at here, folks, and peace. And also don't forget to subscribe and like if you haven't subscribed. So everybody have a good day. Peace.